I've definitely had dead tenants. That's never fun.
Dead?
Dead tenants, yeah, where you somehow get a word.
They're like a deadbeat.
No, like literally they're dead.
It's so interesting. I know you, and what I was interested when we first thought about having you come on was I want to hear about how you're deploying remote vendors. But I would never imagine that one of them would be your maintenance coordinator. That seems like such a localized, on-site type of role.
Yeah, it gets better. I've got more for you there. Insurance is the biggest threat to the apartment industry, hands down. What can a landlord do who has, tuck under 4 parking spaces, 2 sets of stairs, and a walkway? What can you do to make that different?
Right.
The answer is you got to make it cool.
Yes.
You got to make it different.
Yeah.
I mean, because most people have owned these buildings for a very long time. They're very used to not having to do very much to get tenants. It doesn't work anymore.
A show where we get to meet and learn from players within and around the real estate industry. An industry that provides incredible opportunity for creativity, entrepreneurship, and wealth building. Join me as we learn the tips and tricks from these insiders and helping us to carve out a space within this massive industry.
Hey everyone, welcome back to All Things Real Estate. I'm your host, Ari Wintraub, and I'm excited today to have on the show Daniel Glazer of Glazer Property Management. This is the first time we've had a property manager on the show. We've had lenders, we've had brokers, we've had developers, but a huge component of real estate is operating it. And I don't know what the stats are, but I don't think every owner likes to operate and manage their own property. So Daniel Glazer is going to talk to us about all things management and his boutique firm, which I've had the pleasure of interacting with and getting to know him through that. But before we get into the show and hearing about Daniel's story, I wanted to ask you guys to take a moment to click follow, like, subscribe. The best thing is, if you like the show, is to share it with someone else. And without further ado, Daniel, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Ari.
My pleasure. So, as we always like to do to start off, tell us what you do and how you got started doing it.
So I do property management, residential properties, primarily apartment buildings, older type of rent control buildings, which is what you see across LA. Most of the apartment buildings are rent controlled. So primarily we do rent controlled apartment buildings. We do individual condos. We do single family houses. So really everything residential. And I kind of got into it by accident. I don't think anyone grows up wanting to be a property manager.
Right.
But I have a long family history in commercial real estate, literally going back to Ellis Island. My great grandparents came through Ellis Island and owned hotels in New Jersey. My grandfather worked his way up from walking up the tenements in New York City, collecting rent checks, to owning office buildings in Manhattan and various triple nets across the East Coast. My mom had inherited the properties, and I remember she told me she owned a Burger King in Brentwood, New York, which is not nearly as glamorous as Brentwood, LA.
Sure.
But I thought it was the coolest thing. I thought, I want to go there and get free burgers.
Right.
But then I realized going into my senior year of college, I had been majoring in psychology. I thought I just want to do what my mom did. She's a clinical psychologist. I figured I'd major in psychology, figure it out. And I realized the only job options would be being a clinician, dealing with people one-on-one. Didn't want to do that, or being a researcher. And I had no interest in that. So I freaked out. I thought, what am I doing with my life? And I started asking my mom, what does our family do? What our family friends do? And that's when I really learned the real estate story. And I thought, wow, if something my grandfather did 100 years ago is paying for private school and, supporting us until then, I want to do that. So right after college, I got into apartment building brokerage, making cold calls, trying to convince people to sell their properties.
Were you at a big shop, or?
I was with Sperry Van Ness for a couple of years, and then I switched to Marcus and Millichap.
Right.
I convinced my family to get back in the business, and we bought a small apartment building in Westwood Century City. And then mid-renovation, we had gotten a few of the units out. My mom got really sick, and her cancer spread, and I have a single-parent family. So it got to the point where I had to not work for anyone else, and I had to take care of her full-time. This is 2017, 2018. And I was going to the hospital so much, I was thinking that no one's going to employ me. What do I do? Right. So I figured, well, I manage for my family. Why don't I do it for other people? So we went from 5 units in 2018 to over 400 units today.
Wow. What a story. Very neat to hear the background of the Ellis Island. And I can imagine your grandparents at that time or great-grandparents were like many immigrants today. They're just sort of piecing together any investment or any job that they can make for themselves, and then deploying that into other things like the Burger King. Hopefully you got the free burger. And that must have been really hard with having your mom go through that. I'm sorry. And then to see how it put you in a position where you were forced to do it. So it wasn't a job that you aspired to do.
Definitely not. Yeah.
But just out of happenstance and certain conditions of the family, you saw the need, and then you started to grow the business. So it's interesting. I want to go back to the fact that like your business, you said, focuses on a certain type of asset class,
Yes.
which is these older LA rent-controlled RSO buildings.
Mm-hmm.
So there seems like a very specific credential. And so what makes the conditions of those types of properties something that you've sort of built your business on? What characteristics do those buildings have that require a certain type of management?
So there are a lot of rules, and nobody wants to manage their own properties. There's competition, of course, in the space, but it helps that nobody wants to do it. So I step into that void.
But particularly on maybe the rent control buildings. Like if someone's got a brand new, duplex or brand new fourplex, there's maybe a little bit less to do and a little bit less involved. But with something that's older, you tend to get owners that don't want to touch it.
Exactly. So I think it's because that's what I had owned personally, and that's what I had sold or tried to, get people to sell for in brokerage. I mean, a majority of Los Angeles was built between the 20s and the 60s. So most of the apartment buildings you see are of that age, which by nature, they're going to be older and rent control. So I think since I can tell the story as an owner of LA rent control buildings, people can see that I'm personally invested in it, and that's what I know, and that's what I keep up with.
Right. It's an interesting idea, though, I'm thinking, because if you're going to be a property manager in another area, another state, you have nothing to deal with another city about all these rules and regulations and know-how. You're just dealing strictly like with the repairs and the leasing, and that's it. But this adds a whole nother layer for property management in a rent-controlled, market.
Absolutely.
Yeah, really neat. So what's the structure? Now it's how many people in the company?
I'll run down everyone. We're a small but efficient shop. I really don't foresee the need to have a ton of employees at this point. So I have my hands on everything. I oversee everything. I have my brother who works with me. He's out in the field. There's always 10, 15 things to do every day, whether it's keys or vendors or helping tenants with something. My wife helps me with the property management software, onboarding new clients, new tenants. I have an awesome maintenance coordinator who's virtual and based in Mexico, and he's frankly been doing this longer than I have. And he's fantastic. So
it's so interesting. I know you, and what I was interested when we first thought about having you come on was I want to hear about how you're deploying remote vendors. But I would never imagine that one of them would be your maintenance coordinator. That seems like such a localized, on-site type of role.
Yeah, it gets better. I've got more for you there. I got a property management coach last year who really opened my eyes to virtual employees, and that has changed everything about my business. And he's great. He manages the vendors and the tenants. I also have a virtual bookkeeping service who specializes in AppFolio for property management, and that has completely transformed my business. They handle all of the bill pay, all of the management reporting, which is extremely important, and really keeping things up to date. So we operate through Trello. We have various Trello cards talking about transactions. So they're working 24/7. It's really incredible.
What's Trello?
Trello is an Atlassian product, and I only know that because my wife used to work at Atlassian, and it helps businesses work together. So, people can be in any part of the country, any part of the world, and work together through Trello.
Okay. So it's a platform.
Yeah, it's a workflow platform, essentially.
So are these bookkeepers, accounts payable, accountants, are they also in Mexico?
They're all in Mexico.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah, so it's great. And we meet weekly and have financial reviews monthly. It transformed my business, has added so much free time or more time for me to invest elsewhere.
Right, because prior you'd be doing everything.
Everything.
Right.
Exactly.
And now you could, source it out at a fraction of the cost if it was you were paying someone here locally.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to hire people who are better at things, the specific things than you are.
Right.
So it's like my maintenance coordinator is better at that than I am. The financial team, my accounting team, they're better at that than I am, and I have them helping me. It's fantastic.
So this maintenance coordinator, he's out of country, but he's got your vendor list and he's hitting them up.
Vendor list, tenant list. Yeah, it's incredible.
And
with
coordinating
technology.
it all.
It's beautiful.
That's amazing. Incredible.
And then I have leasing associates who are 1099 independent contractors who only get paid based on leases that come in. So I feel like everyone's incentivized properly.
Is that a percentage or is it a flat fee for the leasing?
It's a percentage.
Right.
So.
Fantastic. Yeah, there's always a question with property management. Do you fold in the leasing as part of the flat as part of the percentage that you charge every month? But for you, it's an add-on.
I've been hearing that more and more, and it doesn't make sense to me because I'm inside the industry. I think a lot of people or other management companies are trying to use that as a selling point, but it's really important. Look, economics, you got to incentivize people, human psychology at the end of the day. If you include that as part of the management fee, I think there's very little incentive to get units leased quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, and especially for as best prices possible, because at the end of the day, everyone wants the best rents possible. And unless you incentivize based on a percentage basis, I think it's difficult. And leasing's an entirely different business.
Right. It's just like brokerage and sales.
Exactly.
We work on a percentage basis. So we got this structure. You're really utilizing a lot of these remote services. So it could be a pretty minimal staffing here. Your brother, your mom, you mentioned, and yourself. You've got the business up to 400 units, and you mentioned at the beginning it's a collection mainly of the apartment units, RSO units, some condos, which is how we met on a condo that you were managing for a client of mine who then I was selling it, and then some houses. So what's the benefit, you think, across a different class? Like, how do the houses compare to the apartment units? Do you feel like you get more maintenance calls? Is it harder? Do you kind of not like dealing with the condos because you have the HOAs to kind of work through?
All good questions. I mean, what I love about condos and single family houses in terms of management is that a lot of time the landlords have lived there. And if they're living there, they've taken great care of it. Therefore, by the time that I manage it, it's already very well taken care of. With apartment buildings, it's very different. You just have so many different more variables. Of course, there's more opportunity for more leasing, changing the rent amount more to create value. I love apartment building investing. I think it's fantastic. But there's a lot more that goes into it. With a single family house specifically, it's a very efficient income stream. Got the rent coming in, tenant pays for all the utilities. Ideally, it's a well taken care of house. That could be really it. But with apartments, there are numerous factors and there's just so much out of your control. However, with things like the just cause ordinance and just LAHD stepping in to do inspections for properties that are subject to JCO, the game is changing.
Yeah. It's not only the city that's doing inspections, a lot of insurance companies now. It feels like it's more of a recent thing. I've only been in the business 12 years and, I have not seen before the last couple years insurance carriers hitting you up saying they're coming by for an inspection and then canceling your policy if it doesn't pass. Have you noticed it increase?
Insurance is the biggest threat to the apartment industry, hands down. Newer property, older property, it's by far the biggest threat. Because also, I've had situations where a landlord gets a cancellation letter, or, you have to do these 10 things or we're going to cancel you. And then they do those 10 things for tens of thousands of dollars and they say, oh, thanks, we're going to cancel you anyways.
Right. And for you, it might, if you don't have an understanding owner, they might be like, Daniel, what are you doing? Like, why did I get this letter? Mm-hmm. You're supposed to be managing the place. And so there's a bit of like a learning curve with the owners to be like, this is all new. Like, I had a insurance carrier send me a letter that I had to replace my roof. So I was like, when did you guys see the roofs? They're like, we didn't. We just did an aerial map of the neighborhood and we saw your roofs look old. So that's really, really interesting. That even once you do the repairs, they still drop. It kind of feels on par with like, a claim. Mm-hmm. If you make a claim, the chances that they're going to renew you is really low. Like, it really threatens. So you're saying insurance is the greatest threat to apartment owners right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially, everyone knows about electrical panels and the need to upgrade those. I think what insurance wised up to is that their bets on these properties weren't maybe the best bets because there's increasing regulation. Like we talked about, these buildings are nearing 100 years old, 80, 100 years old. So they realized that between the age of the property, increasing regulation, landlord-tenant law, it's an incredibly litigious business, of course. So I think they just want to take off that responsibility. However, you see new companies coming in all the time, like Honeycomb, for example. I know they're offering policies for a ton of different companies, but who knows if they know what they got themselves into.
Yeah, it's super fraught. And this is probably why on the building that we reconnected on that you're marketing for sale, one of the things I was so attractive about this property is that your owner, at your suggestion, had done all new electrical panels, had done all these updates, and that was probably in response to insurance pressure.
Exactly. And another thing that's really just sad to me is that LA apartment buildings, if you look at the apartment owners list or like the title report, you see these just families who've owned buildings for generations and own entire blocks. And like in this situation specifically, you get someone who inherited the property,
the one on Cochrane.
The idea is give it to your kids as an income source. You think how proud you are to give this down to your kids. Like, I want to do what my grandfather did for me. How awesome is that? However, they get it inherited. And then they have to do these 20 different things. And it's like, I just put hundreds of thousands of dollars into the property and it's still not making me much money.
And some of these kids might not even have the money to do that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
or they could be old enough that you could, go pull out a loan on the property. But if they're like in their 60s and they're not working, they're not going to be able to get a loan.
And most of them are.
Yeah.
So by the time they put out that much money, they don't want to be in the business anymore.
Yeah.
So things that their grandparents or parents created for them just, get sold off.
Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah. I know that as an owner in 2022, the rains, or was it like 2021, we started having what people call the atmospheric rains, where it seemed like LA started getting downpours that it never had before. And they talked about this like sort of side rain that we never had. And we're getting a lot of leaks and water intrusion that, maybe didn't rear its head, before these really kind of wet years. How have you helped your clients, stay ahead of that? Detecting a source of a leak is so hard. Is it the roof or the window? Is it the stucco? Is it the worst of the retrofit windows? And how those go in. So I don't know how much you could speak to that. When you get a water leak, what's the procedure? Let's say like someone's listening and they're a self-manager, and they have a tenant that says, "Oh, I got some mold spots." What's your like course of action there? So you're not spinning wheels with vendors and repairs that don't get you anywhere. and then at the same time having the tenant be in a safe environment, but without also, having to basically empty the unit and, put them in a new place. So
Exactly. And habitability and those types of issues are so stressful.
yeah. So like walk me through that. You get a call from a tenant or they text you some photos. And that's a whole other question about the texting and the tenants, but we can get to that one next.
So it starts well before that, before it becomes an issue. And I'll say a lot of it is a matter of perception, how you approach these things, and I'll explain that. So I'm a native Angelino, very proud to be. The weather is not how it used to be. The California or Los Angeles roofs were not built for the rains that we're seeing today. So keep in mind, a landlord who's owned these properties for decades may not be living in Los Angeles and understand that. So you got to educate them and be really proactive about this. So how to get ahead of it before the situations happen. You got to inspect the roof annually, do roof maintenance. I used to think that roofing companies would just replace roofs. No, there are plenty of repairs and patches you can do.
Yeah, that membrane, they can do that white coating across the whole thing.
Yeah, there's a lot they can do, but I think a thing that a lot of people don't think about is things like trees. All trees, rain gutters. Rain gutters are so important. It becomes truer and truer every year I'm in this business.
Yeah.
If you don't have rain get it's going to be an issue.
Right.
It's going to get
and keeping those things not clogged up too.
Exactly. And regularly maintaining them. But even before that, you've got to trim the trees regularly.
Right.
And it's like, when is rainy season in Los Angeles? It's like unpredictable now.
So good property management is not sitting back waiting for the complaint to come in that someone's got a water issue.
Exactly.
It's maybe knowing, hey, there's conditions that are changing in our environment here. You can send an email blast to every single one of your landlords. Hey, this is what's going on. I recommend a roof, inspection or some tree trimming. So you're trying to proactively get ahead of these things.
Exactly. Have it be a system. So it's like you trim the trees first, then you'll clear out the gutters, and then you'll do the roof inspection. And if all of that fails, you probably have a roof problem.
Right.
But the other thing is, and it's so important, is tenant communication. I mean, you can...
Right. So let's say, you try to be proactive, but you can't catch everything.
Of
and
course.
say something comes through with the tenant hits you up with, evidence of intrusion.
So, I mean, even before that, fortunately, we can somewhat predict the weather in the coming week or so, just based on going on, any of the weather channels or websites. So if you reach out to the tenants ahead of time, hey, let me know as soon as you say something, it's really good to have tenants be incentivized to reach out to you. Because a lot of times it's too late by the time, everything falls.
So you're talking about that there's going to be like we're in January, December, you kind of know it's like these flash flood warnings. You might reach out to all the tenants and say, hey, these are coming. Appreciate you guys letting me know if you see anything.
Exactly.
Wow.
And it's a win-win because they don't want to be stuck in a situation where there's a leak over their head. By the time the rain happens, and the leak is happening, all the roofers are booked up. It all goes back to relationships. With
what
the
property
tenants, with the
management
vendors.
hits up their tenants saying that? I've never heard of that. That's brilliant. It builds trust. It shows them that you care. They probably love the idea to let you know if they see something. Some of them might ignore the email, but the majority of them see it. And even if they don't get back to you, they really appreciate the communication.
I think there's really a human element to property management that a lot of people don't really put on their website or don't really talk about, which is that I may not be able to fix everything immediately, but at the very least, I can get on the phone and say, hey, I hear you, I'm working on it. You create that, you push for the communication from the very start of management, you're going to get a much better result for everyone.
Yeah, 100%. You're setting the expectation by, being a good communicator yourself. But you still have tenants that maybe don't check their emails, don't check their voicemails, and they only reach out when there's, something disastrous or what they think is disastrous. So one of my questions was, everyone knows, many people fear property management because they say, I don't want to fix toilets in the middle of the night. How has it been for you as a learning curve? Because how long have you been doing this now?
7, 8 years. I've been doing it for other people for
Right.
7 years, but 10 total.
Okay. So over the trajectory of 10 years, how have you maybe grown and better handled these, 10 p.m. text messages on a Friday night that someone's toilet is leaking or that their light bulb has gone out?
There's really no good way to approach it. I'll say that from the start. However, I mean, being in property management, being a property owner, whether it's 2 units or 2,000 units, it's a lifestyle. I mean, this is the life I chose. And my expectations have to be fitting.
Yep.
At the beginning, when I was 2017, 2018, when I'm first getting calls for toilets or whatever it may be, it's like, oh, that sucks. I don't want to have to deal with this.
Yeah. How dare they hit me up
How
like this?
dare they?
Yeah.
I know it's a weekends or whatever time it is, but it's like
It's a light bulb. They should change their own light bulb.
Exactly.
Why don't they know that?
But this is the business we're in. We're in the housing business. It's very litigious, and it's also these people's homes.
Yeah.
So it's about your expectations, and I think being able to be equipped to handle them.
Yeah.
Someone calls or texts me at 2 p.m., plumbing problem, connect them with my plumber over text. It's pretty much taken care of.
Right.
But you got to build those relationships over years.
Yeah. And it's easy when it's 2 p.m. opposed to
2 a.m., yeah.
2 a.m. Yeah, I'm sure you have like an emergency after hours number.
Yeah, I do.
Like
I have
that.
an answering service. What used to happen when I was trying to do everything myself is I
Right.
get so many calls, my voicemail box would be full constantly.
Right.
So it's like, well, what do I do about this? I had to get an answering service.
And then do they know to then throw it to a handyman or something?
What I have them do is if it's an emergency or anything, I tell them is an emergency. Anything really leak related, anything like
Then they
fire
call
danger,
emergency vendor.
Then they reach out to me. The tenant will call the answering service. The answering service gets me on the phone.
And you make a call.
And then I make the call.
Right. But they don't hit you up unless it's an emergency.
They don't.
Yeah.
If it's not an emergency, they'll send me an email and that'll, summarize everything.
Got it. So much of what you've been saying triggers this idea of going back to like the beginning of our conversation about building this structure that you have now. It's harder to be proactive, to send these preemptive messages and communications, to have these systems, these protocols in place when you're spread too thin and you're like a chicken with your head cut off.
Exactly.
And it's very similar to my business as a broker and, property manager, an investor of my own stuff, that if you're too busy trying to do everything, you can't set yourself up for, the preemptive systems. And I can see that, really makes sense in what you're doing in the property management. If you're just on the defense, there's no time to send out the preemptive message like, hey, these rains are coming up. And it's just like my world in brokerage sales. If I'm on the defense just trying to field like running comps and setting up showings and writing offers and responding to requests for repairs, if I can't have someone helping me do all that, it's going to be very hard for me to send like weekly seller update emails. So it really kind of strikes this chord about how important it is to delegate and have control of your business and what you're doing, so that you can be the one that's like setting the expectation in those preemptive messages. So
exactly. And so you can be at your best when it counts. I
Yes.
mean, last year, over the past couple of years, I've been looking into a property management coach. I grew up playing basketball. Obviously, you have a coach in basketball. There are executive coaches. There are various types of coaches. But, I discovered there are property management coaches too. And that totally changed everything for me to put in those systems so I can be at my best when it counts.
what else are the takeaways if I don't want to pay for the coaching service? What are the high level, like, one is this, putting the systems in place so you can free your time to improve the business, improve the communications. Anything beyond that?
It's all people. at the end of the day. I mean, look, you can go on a website and look for a virtual assistant or something like that who you have no connection to, or you get a warm lead. Like that's what really helped me with my coach, is that they knew the people they were referring me to. They knew the maintenance coordinator. They knew the accounting team. Being referred to people who you already know are good and verified, that's really good.
Okay, so you're now talking about like the business development part.
In terms of getting people to who work, I guess hiring people,
like vendors and repair people.
Vendors, repair people.
So if there's a warm connection, they've worked for someone
yeah,
or they've worked for you before. That's a big part of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask about that. So vendors is a huge thing in management. It sounds like in the studio now they have a vendor doing some plumbing repairs here. But to that, I mean, that is everything in property management, right? Who are your vendors for handling these instances that come up? When you do have a leak, do you trust someone to tell you what the source of it is, and where you're going to spend the money, and are they going to be timely, and are they going to be dependable? So how do you go about deciding who to call, and when do you decide to cut, bait with someone and move on to a new vendor?
It's tough because you build incredible relationships with these people, and I think over time the bad ones kind of fade out. I mean, I've used various of every type of vendor you could think of over the past 10 years. But I think when you find the good ones, you have to be great to them. You got to hold on to them with everything. But I also think it's extremely important to be someone people want to work with. Even if you have the best vendor or the best plumber, if you're not someone that they want to work with, they're not going to help you. I mean, the advantage of my relationships with my vendors is that I know them for so long. They know my kids' names. They come to my house to help with things. That's one perk of property management. I get some repairs for free.
Yeah.
I tell my wife is a perk of the job. But it's all relationships.
100%.
And it's finding the good people and being good to them, which really is not difficult. It's very simple.
Most people don't think about that, and I need to always remind myself of that. I'm grateful for the vendors that I have. Often they're vendors that are helping my clients, prep their properties for sale or for lease. And I could, rely on these guys to come through for me. And they're great. They're so talented, and you have to thank them. And it's one thing you're paying them, but that's not, you can't just expect that they're going to, be, when there's these torrential rains and you need a roofer, to put a tarp on something, it's not just that you paid these guys on time, it's how you treat them.
Exactly, and that they know there's future business coming and that they know you're someone they want to work with. I mean, it's really, it's a very simple business. It's difficult because you're dealing with so many different people and so many different situations, but it's very simple. Treat people well and you'll be treated well.
Yeah, it reminds me of a slogan, a poster I see. It's like, be nice and work hard, and you'll be successful. One thing I've been noticing since the rate hike in 2022 is the volume of accidental landlord / property managers. The interest rate hike that happened then has what they call it, like the lock-in effect, that people don't want to sell their homes mainly because the interest rate is 3%, and they're never going to get that again, even with Karsh, the new Fed chair. It's not going to happen, and they know that, and so they're just not going to sell. And so they become landlords. They may go buy another house and trade up, but they're not selling that, and so they're now becoming property managers of their properties that they were never intending to be a landlord of. How have you noticed that shift? Is that something that I'm only noticing as a realtor? And maybe is it now time, what are we, like 4 years on from that, where these landlords are calling you and saying, hey, I got this house in Westwood, we've been managing on our own, but we're kind of done. Like, I don't know if you've noticed that.
It's a mix. I mean, I've definitely had some of that for single family houses and condos, which is again, great because they've lived there, it's well taken care of and everything. But a lot of what I deal with in terms of accidental is inheritance.
Right.
People inherit various different types of things, but I think a lot of people don't realize what it means to inherit an apartment building or a rental property. That's the type of accidental landlord I deal with the most. Or their parent gets older and then all of a sudden the parent needs to go into a nursing facility. That's what I deal with a ton right now, is people whose parents need, because people are living longer, they're going into a nursing facility and then they see the astronomical costs and it's like, okay, well, interest rates are high, sales prices are low, how can we generate income? And then the house the parent had lived in generates income to help pay part of the nursing home costs.
Right. Opposed to like they would have just sold it because they would have died.
A massive capital gains tax. So, frequently it's a lot of these people waiting for their parents to die.
Yeah.
And they're paying for the nursing in the meantime.
Yeah. Well, that is a great opportunity to hire a manager. And I can imagine that's a big, growth part of your business. There's something that crossed my mind that I wanted to ask about, and this would be a fun question, is like, give us a story of the kind of wildest sort of instance like you've dealt with as a property manager.
I've definitely had dead tenants. That's never fun.
Dead
tenants, yeah, where you somehow get a word.
They're like a deadbeat.
No, like literally they're dead. And the family member lets you know, or the maintenance person goes in and tells you, and it's like, oh my God, what do you do? Who do you contact? This is part of why I ask tenants for emergency contacts in these situations, because a lot of times the person who passes is older, doesn't have any family or no one I know to reach out to. But the police process is crazy. They treat it like a crime scene. They put tape over the door. You can't go inside. Meanwhile, you have this unit where it's like, what do? You don't want to overimpose.
But you got to turn it. You got to fix it up.
Exactly. But it's, this is
how long could that
territory.
Wow, that's happened?
It can take months. And they have to find the next of kin. That can take a while. And
then all the other tenants are like asking questions and like,
exactly.
You're a person of interest, and they're in investigating you, and yeah.
It's weird. It's sad. It's just strange to be in that position, to be in such a... look, these are people's homes. You're inevitably going to get involved with their lives.
Right.
That's just a part of the business.
Yeah. Where do you see LA housing going in the next, 5 to 10 years? There's a lot of people know a housing shortage. There also seems to be like a glut of these new buildings that are for sale that people have built, and then they can't refinance them and take out the bridge debt, and so they're now selling them. And there's a lot of landlords that are fed up with California, and so they're selling. There's people that are knocking down single family and trying to get a bit more density. Kind of, what's your take on the LA housing and rental market in that time span?
There are a few things that come to mind immediately. One, generationally speaking, the baby boomers are getting older. So there's going to be, when they pass away and they own a ton of the properties, it's really incredible how many properties some people own, but a lot of people are coming into a massive inheritance. And I really don't think they plan to keep on to the property. So I think there's going to be a ton of sales in the years to come of apartment building portfolios.
I think that's good.
It is good.
Because new owners are going to fix them up. They're maybe going to look for opportunities to make them cash flow better. So adding ADUs and adding more units and improving them, making them healthier and safer places to live.
Yeah, I think that's definitely an optimistic view.
It is optimistic because then you get like clients, like you're saying, that inherit them, but they don't have the means to fix them up and get all that electrical work done and stuff. Forget ADUs.
Exactly. And then another aspect of it is that I have very few clients who have bought their properties, their apartment buildings specifically, as opposed to inherited them. But of the people buying are more optimistic, in their 30s like me, and are buying at a great basis right now. So I see that trend continuing for sure. Another thing I'm seeing is
that trend is, coming back, and it maybe was sort of gone for a few years, but I hear about these owners that are now focusing back on, San Francisco is definitely that way, in LA as well, where these owners are coming back and they're buying in better areas than they maybe thought they could have.
Yeah, at a better rate. I
Right.
mean, who thought you could go into West LA at a high 5, low 6 cap? Like,
Yeah.
that's crazy to me. I started in the business in 2013. Inglewood was a 6.5 cap.
Right.
To think you could get that today is crazy. But another thing I'm seeing that's really interesting is that you're getting a different type of renter these days. In terms of people coming to Los Angeles, you're getting a significantly wealthier type of tenant, which really, the people who are leaving here, mostly it's because of affordability, and a ton of them are, but the people coming in, frankly, they're coming from New York or they're coming from San Francisco, where LA looks like a deal.
Yeah.
So you see the actual tenant profile is getting wealthier, and you're also seeing the tenant profile is, frankly, wisening up on the tenant rules.
Yeah, 100%. If the wealth of these tenants that can afford to pay, $4,000 a month for a one bedroom, guess what? They are able to pay for that because they went and did a graduate degree, and they are more informed on how to get information and protect themselves.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you have problems at all different levels of the rental spectrum. You have properties that are just really neglected out in, I don't know, East Hollywood or something like that.
Sure.
You have different problems there versus what you have in prime Santa Monica.
Right.
Whether one or the other is better, I can't say for sure, but you're always going to have a certain type of problem.
That is a trend for sure, because as we know, the new generation doesn't care about buying a home.
It's not possible.
It's not possible.
Yeah.
And also just the values are different. I mean, I think, my generation and your parents' generation, it was all about buying a home, no matter what the interest rates were. This is what you did. But now the new generation would be happy to be more mobile and more flexible, and have a building that has coffee in the lobby and amenities and a great gym, and they can travel. And so we were a 40% renter state and 60% owner. Now it's flipping in the next 10 years. So that trend is real, and it's going to change the way you manage. You got to be more equipped to handle this more sophisticated tenant base. What do you think an owner could do to be a better owner? Your clients.
I mean, look, I think at the end of the day, we're dealing with products. A rental house or an apartment unit, they're products on a market, just like you go to a grocery store, which brand of milk are you getting? I mean, I think you need to have a superior product, frankly, because there are a lot of people leaving the state. There are a lot of vacancies on the market right now.
And this new construction, like I mentioned, they're competing against that.
I also have this interesting theory. No one else has brought this to me, but it's just what I'm thinking. I used to own student housing, and I was really into student housing at a certain time. And I think kids getting out of college now who have lived for the past 4 years in these incredible student housing complexes that have, what are the pools type where they go around and Starbucks on the bottom. They come in with such an incredibly high expectation of what a one bedroom is supposed to look like that unless you have that, you're not getting your unit rented. So I think with that generation coming up and having those expectations, people are expecting that level of product for the same price.
Yeah, it's interesting. And it's a great point. And this conversation around property management is really kind of opening up these other, themes of real estate. And it's really exciting. But, what, someone can do with an RSO building, RSO building, forget that, but with a garden style 8-unit building that doesn't have subterranean parking where you can put in, bike lockers and EV chargers or a gym, you're then, as a property owner, knowing that that you're competing against these full, mixed use, brand new, elevated branded buildings. You're looking for opportunities. Like, can you pop something up on the roof? What can you do with this side yard? Can you make it a dog run? What can you do to elevate the lobby? So it's an interesting idea.
It's tough because also I heard the stat somewhere, but like 90% of the apartment buildings in Los Angeles are not big buildings. A lot of them are 2 to 20 unit buildings.
90%.
Something like that. It's like an extremely high percentage of the apartment buildings are these mom and pop garden styles.
And that's never going to change.
It's never going to change.
Because like I was mentioning my conversation with Bill Whitty of Related, I was running this scenario by him. If you have a street with 4 8-unit buildings, would he choose to tie them together, scrape them, and build like a 350 apartment building? He's like, yeah, that'd be great, but the city would never let you do it.
Yeah.
You cannot take away a multifamily even though you're adding way more. They just don't allow it. So that's never going to change. We're going to be like in this environment forever, which aesthetically is great. Like I think that makes a very pretty landscape of LA. You go to mid-city in that La Cienega and Crescent Heights corridor with all those beautiful big duplexes.
Yeah.
If those were all to be scraped and turned into, apartment blocks, it would really change the face of the city.
Yeah, and there's a certain segment of tenant who really loves that historical Art Deco type of look. Yeah. So, I think
Spanish revival, Deco charm, character.
Yeah, and what can a landlord do who has, 4 parking spaces, 2 sets of stairs and a walkway? What can you do to make that different?
Right.
The answer is you got to make it cool.
Yes.
You got to make it different.
Yeah.
Because most people have owned these buildings for a very long time. They're very used to not having to do very much to get tenants. It doesn't work anymore.
100%.
You got to do something that really pulls in a tenant from the beginning.
Can you imagine yourself like advising them on that? Like if you're running their property and it's not leasing and they're getting a lot of turnover, do they come to you and say, Daniel, like what can I do to improve things?
I'm always making as many suggestions as I can. That's always my approach from the start. I think a lot of managers take the perspective of I'm doing a good job if I'm spending as little money as possible.
Right.
That's bad.
Yeah.
That can be very bad.
Right.
So I make all the suggestions from the beginning because frankly, unless you get your unit rented, it doesn't matter.
Right.
So you have to be different and you have to do professional photography. You have to be really smart about what that first picture is and what it portrays. You really got to cater to your audience because frankly, they don't care what your perspective is on your past, 50 years of owning the building. They just want a cool place to live.
Yeah. No, that's huge. It's really important. I know as a broker about positioning a unit and, how to present it, and the fact that you guys are, going to give a property owner that advice. It really is crucial. So as I like to do, as we wind down the interview, is ask a series of questions that every guest answers. And the first one is, where do you want to be in 3 years from now?
It's a great question. Personally, I want to be in a different house with a better school district, which now that I have a almost 3-year-old and an 8-month-old or 9-month-old, is becoming more apparent. Personally, that's where I would like to be. Professionally, I really want to keep the personal touch that I have with all my clients have my cell phone. They'll text me, call me. I really like most of my clients. I want to keep that small family business feel. We're at 400 units now. Can I keep that going forward? Yeah, I think I can if I keep hiring smart and hiring well. I'd like to have systems more automated in terms of artificial intelligence, reminders to tenants, especially weather related. I think if I could get that more on a kind of an automated without me even having to think about that, I think embracing technology more. And I would like to hire more people to be a little bit less stressed out. Yeah. I'd like to be a little calmer and be able to spend some more time with my kids.
Well, those are great 3, goals. And, if I can help at all with the home and the good school district, let me know. I would say the next question is, what would you have done going back 10 years when you first started? What would you have done different?
I wouldn't change anything because of the way that I learned and the people who I came to know. I can't think of anything that would have worked out better.
That's a great answer. And then for the next, what was a favorite book, movie, or song?
I really like going back to as a student of psychology. I love the Malcolm Gladwell books.
Which one's your favorite?
Outliers comes to thought immediately.
Yeah, that's the idea that it takes a certain amount of hours,
10,000
doing something to become like an expert and an outlier in it.
Yeah.
And that's how like Bill Gates got to be, where he is, because he had access to programming lab and he was programming for so many hours.
Well, that's it, being in the right place at the right time. Like that, I love podcasts. I love this podcast called Founders that as I drive so much every day that I listen to. And I think a lot of life and a lot of success is about being at the right place in the right time. So, there's that. I'm a sucker for musicals. Like my wife and I love Hamilton. That's great. We'll play that in the car. I love Jersey Boys. Is something I shared with my my mom and my brother. So.
Jersey Boys is a good one.
My
dad's seen that like 5 times.
Me too.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And then what is it all for, right? So you're building this business. You're in touch with your clients. You're trying to better the systems. Why are you doing it?
Yeah, and I think that's a great question. And frankly, I don't think anybody wants to be a property manager. I think it's a really interesting business. I think it's a great way to learn because I want to own buildings. But at the end of the day, I do what I do because I want to be able to give my grandkids what my grandfather gave to me.
Yeah.
And if they can look back, 80 years from now and go, wow, that's what our grandfather did, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Brilliant. It'll be neat to see 80 years from now what we're handing them over and what it's all like. But it's so cool to get to know you more and to have chatted truly all things real estate. Like I said, it's like a whole world of conversations that came out of property management, which people wouldn't necessarily think would happen. So thank you.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Daniel. Good stuff.